Hello, everyone. This is Stacy. Welcome to the landing. Hello, and welcome to the landing. Today, we're stepping back in time to listen to a remarkable oral history recording from the Linking Generations collection, part of the Southern Oral History Program. This interview was recorded on June 23, 1987, in Buxton, North Carolina, and features Rany B. Jennette. Mr. Jennette had a connection to the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse that few people could claim. Born at the lighthouse in 1921, he was the son of the last lighthouse keeper to serve there. His memories offer a first-hand glimpse into life at this famous lighthouse. As you listen, imagine the generations of Outer Banks families whose lives have been shaped by the sea, the shifting sands, and the beacons that guide mariners safely home. Through voices like Mr. Jennette's, we preserve not only oral history, but the stories that bring that history to life.
Today is June 23rd, 1987. We're in room 30 at the Falcon Motel, Cape Hatteras, and we're going to be, this is take one, interviewing Rany Jennette.
Do that now, or you don't want any pictures on.
All right. Okay, just so that Kathy and I have our pictures in our mind set, let's, if you don't mind, just go back over the rooms again. And let's start with that sort of dining room, family room that you talked about.
How about wherever you entered the house? How you entered through that room?
Mm-hmm.
That was the most. Why don't you start off with talking about where you would, enter the house, the door most often used.
You want me to just go ahead and?
Yeah.
Okay. The door we used most to enter the house was, of course, the dining room door facing the ocean. On the right corner, or in the right corner, was the roll-top desk. This is where my father used to do all of his paperwork. To the left would be the heating stove. It was called a heatrolla. Right in the center of the room was the big round oak dining room table. Yes. Oh, okay. And in the northwest corner of the room was the radio. Up against the back wall was the sideboard. And then we had the various chairs on the table and a rocking chair my mother used quite a bit. That's about all the furnishings in that room except one chaise lounge, a black leather chaise lounge. That would take in the furnishings of the dining room, or what would be now the family room.
Okay, well, would you speak just for a bit about the downstairs bedroom?
Downstairs bedroom had what I would refer to as heavy furniture. A real large headboard and, of course, a lower footboard with about a 12-inch platform on top. Had the bureau with the large mirror. This is all matching furniture. Had the washstand. And I believe in that room also had a rocking chair. And the parlor, or living room, used to refer to it as the parlor, or front room. That also had was furnished with what we referred to as overstuffed furniture. Also had a piano in there, the upright. If memory serves me right, it was Stief, S-T-I-E-F-F, I think.
And that's the room that had the Christmas tree and all.
Right, that's where we had the Christmas tree.
Okay, I think that's probably, we probably got that pretty well.
Well, how about upstairs? Could you describe upstairs a little bit?
Upstairs, the room that I slept in, there was 2 beds, foot to foot. We would have lots of company out there. This is the reason that I can say that we were not isolated. We always had visitors, friends from the village who come spend the night. Always had a breeze out there. And the bedroom that my mother and father used was the room facing the ocean. And this is where they slept with the 2 little girls, the babies. The other bedroom was my 2 older sisters. They had that room.
And how many boys were in the bedroom with you?
I only had one brother.
Ah.
And he went in the Navy when he was barely 17. He was the oldest.
And the furniture, what was it made out of upstairs?
The beds, they were iron, they're round. I don't know what you would really call those. Iron bedsteads is what we call them.
What, painted white or something like that?
Painted white. They would change the painting occasionally. They were all painted though, not just brass.
Do you remember your bed coverings?
Well, in the winter, of course, we had the sheet. We had the quilt. We always had quilts. And I remember the pillows were on a bolster. Okay, you had the single bolster, and the pillows were, I guess everybody uses them, right? Of course, I'm so much older than you people. You don't remember these things.
We know about them, though.
And my sister has a right interesting thing, I think, that she'll show you, I'm sure. It's a spread that my mother made, embroidered with all the names of the family in it, and the close friends. And I'd forgotten all about it until she broke it out the other day and showed it to me. She did an awful lot of that embroidery work.
That reminded me of something you mentioned last time. You said in the bedroom downstairs about the large pillows and the bolster being against it, and I asked you, did your mother do any sort of handwork on those pillows?
Yeah.
And you mentioned, I believe, that she did. Or?
Right, she did. An awful lot of embroidery work.
Do you remember any colors in there at all? Does anything like that stand out in your mind?
Oh, red and pink, red. There's a lot of red. This spread I'm telling you about is all red.
Do you remember the house changing much from winter to summer? I mean, with regards to how you did things.
Well, I don't want to follow you on that.
Well, did your mother, for example, take all the doilies off the furniture for the summer, or put up new curtains, or...
Oh, I'm sure she must have, but I don't remember any specific thing. One thing I remember in spring is all the furniture would go out in the yard and be aired out.
Do you remember putting down like a matting on the floor at all?
A matting?
Mm-hmm. In the summer?
No, I don't remember anything like that.
Who kept the stoves?
Who kept the stoves? I hauled the coal from the coal bin that was back of the double keepers. They had 3 compartments. Every keeper had his own supply of coal. And I can remember walking over there as a little fellow with a coal hod, is that what you call it, bucket, and load it up and bring it in. And my father usually, when it came to taking care of fires, he didn't let the youngsters handle that too much.
What was the room in the house that you used the most?
The room we used the most, the dining room, or what would be known as a family room now. That's where all of our entertainment was there. The radio, and it was the largest room downstairs too, of course.
Do you remember the things that you did in that room?
We listened to the radio a lot, and of course this is where we did our studying for school at night. We'd get around the table, and this was a must. I mean, you didn't have any excuse for not studying. So,
how did you get to school?
Lots of times we'd get a ride from some of the old lifesavers that lived down a mile down the beach, and then one of the keepers might take us, but usually we always walked home. We didn't have any pavement either. We walked through the sand.
Where was the school?
School was about a mile and a half away in the Buxton. You're not familiar with Buxton at all? Well, you're in Buxton, the beginning of it now, but I mean the village of Buxton proper.
No. Is it down the road towards Ocracoke?
Oh yeah, it's just a mile or so down here. That's the reason I was asking if you knew any landmarks at all.
Yeah. Is the school still there?
No, it's not there.
I imagine in the wintertime it was somewhat chilly out here.
Very cold. The chill factor very, because you always have wind, usually.
How did you all wash? Remember, you didn't remember any pitcher and bowl or washstand in your bedroom. Did you go down to the kitchen, or?
I'm sure we must have had one, but I don't know exactly where it was. Right.
Do you remember your mother cooking?
Oh, yes.
What was your favorite meal?
My favorite? I expect beans. I still like beans. Yeah. We ate a lot of beans. And you know what collards are?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We ate a lot of collards.
Did you have a garden, a vegetable garden?
Oh, yes. String beans, cucumbers. And collards. We ate a lot of collards.
Earphones.
Commercial interruption. Is that right?
Yes. I wanted to ask you about your dad. Did he wear a uniform as the principal keeper?
All the keepers wore uniforms. Uniform service came in about 1890. The uniform was the cap with the visor, of course, the embroidered Lighthouse as the emblem on the cap. The uniforms were, I think, what they called a blue Melton uniform, a soft cloth. The keeper had an embroidered square here with a loop on each end with the letter K. The first assistant had the number 1. The second assistant had the number 2. This is, describes the uniform, I think, very well.
I'm curious about, as a kid, how did you go up in the lighthouse? Did you help your father? Those kinds of things.
Well, yes, I'd go up and I'd shine a lot of brass, and I'd help him clean the land sometimes. And then I would, he'd let me go out on deck and look at the ships passing through what we call spyglasses. They were binoculars, big heavy binoculars. Shipping lanes were close in, and quite often you'd see the seamen walking on the deck. Yeah. They're that close.
Do you remember any wrecks?
I remember the 1933 storm, the G.A. Kohler came ashore up in the Rodanthe area. Banana ship that I was telling you about went aground in outside of Hatteras Inlet, loaded with bananas. The offhand, that's about the two I remember the most.
And what did you do with those bananas?
What did I do? I ate green bananas until I got sick, and I just don't care for bananas now. I mean, it's one of those things that hangs by you, I think.
Do you remember your sisters helping your dad in the lighthouse?
No, I don't remember whether they did anything in the lighthouse or not. I guess they were busy down in the house with my mother, because they all did their part in cleaning.
Everybody had a job.
Oh, yes.
Now, did your dad, he had to climb the lighthouse every day?
No, the keepers had duty every 72 hours. So they had 24-hour duty. The 3 keepers, they had the 24-hour duty. Then, of course, their primary job was to light the lamp and put it out the next day, and to wind the weights up, the clock mechanism that revolved the lens. Then the cleaning they had to do. And when they had the duty, they were awake 24 hours because they had to watch the light. They didn't stay in the lighthouse. They stayed on the premises. But they still had to be awake. Very interesting operation.
Sounds like it. When your dad was on that 24-hour duty, what did he do? Just stay in the downstairs room, or after once that lighthouse was working?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he just stayed in the house.
Do you remember any publications that you got as a child, or your parents got? I'm thinking something like National Geographic or Saturday Evening Post or something.
Saturday Evening Post we did, and also National Geographic. The picture in the museum of my dad cleaning the lands came out of National Geographic, the December issue in 1933.
Would you describe, I'm curious about the 2 hurricanes, and I was wondering if you would describe them and what happened as a result of those hurricanes.
Okay, in August of 1933, my father received word that the storm was coming up the coast. We didn't call them hurricanes, they were storms. And so we were not too concerned about that because we'd had these storms before. I remember that was a very dry summer, the driest I ever saw. We had a pond behind the dwellings that was in some places maybe 6 feet deep, and it had dried up. The bottom cracked just like a desert. So you have to bear in mind that we had no dunes then. Dunes are man-made. They're not natural. We had a broad, flat beach, some 400 feet of beach. So the August storm came, the ocean rolled across the beach, filled the ponds. They were able to take care of the overwash. So we didn't have a whole lot of problems. 2 weeks later, we got word that another storm was coming up the coast. This was in early September, more severe than the first storm, and the keepers should take precaution and move their families. My dad moved us to my grandfather's house. He instructed the other two keepers to do the same, to move their families into Buxton. When the storm hit, the area was still flooded. Breakers were actually breaking on the principal keeper's house, busted the doors down after he had put large nails on, and the big oak dining room table that was in the dining room he had placed up against the doors. The seas busted the door down, and the table was upended, just bottom up. And after the storm, water waist deep to my dad in the dining room. So after that storm, we never did go back there to live. That was the last time. We thought it was just going to be a temporary move. And in 1936, the Lighthouse Department abandoned this lighthouse. They built a new tower in Buxton, and this lighthouse was abandoned from 1936 to 1950. Just left vandalism and whatever. Well, we don't have storms we haven't had storms like that now. The last one was in 1944. The track of the hurricanes changed and went into the Gulf, the superstorms we call them. And at the time we were having these types of storms in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. There was nothing on this beach but a Coast Guard station every 7 miles. So you really couldn't see any physical damage because there wasn't anything to be damaged. Did I tell you a little bit about storms? They're mean.
Must have been scary living out here during that.
Where did you all move to?
We moved to our grandfather's house in Buxton.
After the storm?
Then we moved into my uncle's house. He was a lighthouse keeper in Rock Point, Maryland, and we lived there for a long time.
Did your parents take some of the things with what they could salvage with them?
No furnishings. No, that was all left out there. In fact, everything on the first floor was just completely ruined, of course. The piano, I remember the old piano was a veneer finish, and it just popped up. And
did the Lighthouse Service provide some of those furnishings?
No, they were all owned by the people that lived there.
Do you remember cleaning the lens, where you did it and how you did it?
Oh yes, the lens were cleaned with alcohol, and then it seems like about every 6 months they used a rouge, a jeweler's rouge. Used a camel hair brush to brush it on there, and I think this was about twice a year they did this.
Was the equipment kept up in the lighthouse tower?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they used for cloth, it was what they call waste. You know what waste is? Okay. This is all the cleaning material they had.
Do you recall that the Lighthouse Service at one time provided special equipment for all this? Did you have a full range of oil cans and various things that were all stamped U.S. Lighthouse Service?
Yeah, yes, everything in the way of supplies was, of course, furnished by the Lighthouse Department. Supplies and all materials were brought in by buoy tenders. They would anchor out in Cape Channel. And then, of course, that's 6 miles. Then they'd load it aboard the small boats and bring it ashore. Like supplying coal, they'd load these boats to the gunnels and bring them in as close as they could until they ran aground, and then it was overboard and haul it all day on their back, and sometimes in waist-deep water.
Did your father go out to pick these things up?
He would always go to the when the tender anchored. He would always hire someone with a small, what we call gas boat, to take him out there and to check off the supplies, and then the buoy tender captain would be responsible for getting them ashore into the lighthouse. The way they did that was they'd hire someone with a horse and cart to haul them from what we call the mail landing to the lighthouse. And a little later on, when the Model A Ford came in, they hired someone with a Model A Ford truck to haul the supplies in. A lot of fun.
Do you remember the assistant keeper's family?
Oh, yes. I can remember, I think it's 8 different assistant keepers that was there in my time.
Did they have children that you played with?
For the most part, yes. I can remember two couples that had no children that were there. The others did have. I had quite a few.
Did you ever go up the Little Kennecky or someplace like that? Or did you pretty much not go that far up and down the beach?
We probably went to Hatteras Village more than any other, as far as visiting is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Hatteras is 12 miles. Back then, it seemed more like 50. So you had the sand trails.
Now, did your dad in between, say, this 1927, 1933 era, did you all have a Model A, or did you still have horse, or what did you all do?
He had Chevrolet. So in 1932, he had a Chrysler. 33, he had a Chrysler. But prior to that, it was always Chevrolets. I remember the one picture, I don't know where I showed it to you or not, was when they were remodeling the house, building 2 rooms on it. There was a 29, a 26, I think it was a Chevrolet touring car. That was his.
So there was a garage out there to put it in?
They used the old summer kitchen. After they put the kerosene cook stove inside, they did away with the summer kitchen. He turned that into a garage. All keepers had a garage.
Must have been interesting. Did you do much fishing or hunting or anything like that as a boy?
Most of the fishing we did was in the Sound. Go out in Cape Channel in a boat. Very little surf fishing. I can remember my father going, he'd take a hand line with a toggle in it and a 10 squid on the end of it. Coil the rope up in a bucket, swing it over his head, and catch a drum. Back then, you could equip yourself for fishing probably with $1. Now you've got to have $20,000 before you even think about going sport fishing. So.
Could you possibly describe what a day was like for your family? On a typical day?
Summer or winter?
How about both? Start with summer?
Okay, summer. One thing we couldn't do, we couldn't pull our shoes off and go barefoot until the first day of May. That was one of the rules they set. We couldn't go swimming right after we ate lunch, or we call it, or supper, what we call supper. In the summer, we spent an awful lot of time on the beach, collecting shells, lots of shells. Then we had flat beach, no sand dunes, and we had lots of overwash. Swimming, belly surfing, no surfboards. And I don't know why someone ever drowned or even got hurt, but I guess we were protected because we went swimming in rough weather sometimes. The Lighthouse was always a favorite place for the village people to come and go swimming. That was a swimming beach. I remember over our cistern, we had this little house that the lattice sides, this is where they went to change their clothes. And lots of visitors.
Did your parents go swimming too?
Yes, my mother, she'd have on an old dress, no bathing suit, an old dress, and she'd go and sit on the water's edge. She wouldn't swim. Of course, you can't do much swimming in the ocean anyway. Barefooted and had an old dress on. That's the way she went. Didn't have bathing suits much then.
You say you couldn't go barefoot till the First Amendment.
That's right. I don't know why that was, but that was the day we pulled the shoes off.
Is that when, did your father change his uniform and go to whites and that kind of, around that time too?
No, they wore the same uniform year round.
Oh.
The only thing they changed was the top of the cap. That went to white. In the winter it was blue.
How about a winter day for you all?
I'm going to change the tape now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rolling again.
Okay, could you describe a winter day? What you did during the winter?
A winter day. Okay. We did an awful lot of walking on the beach because this is when we had the hard northeast winds, and you'd find a lot of debris on the beach, and you know, it's just good shell hunting, and occasionally you'd find an old bottle that someone had thrown overboard from a ship. Scavenging, I guess you'd call it. This is what we did mostly, and chase the wild horses. That was a lot of fun.
Ever catch any?
Oh yeah, sure. Let them drag us right down to in the surf, right on the what we call the wash. You know, we did a lot of that because there's a lot of horses here. Horses and cattle and goats and hogs. They're all over this beach. My father had 40 head of cattle. He had 17 wild horses, one saddle horse. So we had plenty to do, plenty of entertainment. We made our entertainment, like the shells I was telling you about, and the four-wheeled carts that we made to push along the beach. Cut a pine tree down and get the wheels. The bark would be the tread of the tire. Cut open tomato cans and make fenders, bottle caps for hubcaps, and you know, all the good things.
What, do you remember what you did at night?
At night, in the winter, we had to get our lessons. That was a must. All get around the big round oak table and the mantle lamp in the center. That was the brightest lamp, and we'd study. And we played games. One game I remember was, you probably never heard of it. It was called Cumsy Cumsy. Okay. So that was just giving the initials of an item in the house. One person would say Cumsy Cumsy and say, what do you come with? Say DK. Okay, that's doorknob. Then the others would try to guess what it was. You never heard of that? Huh? Maybe you called it something else.
Same thing. Yeah, we played a slightly different version.
Yeah, okay.
You know, what am I thinking of?
Well, that's the same
Give
thing.
a color.
Huh.
Blue.
Well, all right. And we played lots of dominoes at night. And checkers. No cards. Cards was, the old folks was always a form of gambling. Now they'd play checkers, they'd play dominoes, but no cards. There's no cards in our house. Isn't that strange?
Were your parents Methodist? Are you Methodist?
A Methodist, right. Scripture reading every morning for breakfast. Every morning.
Did your dad do that, or did you all pass the...
Usually he did, and occasionally we would pass it around.
Do you remember, was it a small Bible, or was it a large sort of family Bible?
Well, we had both. We had the large Bible, and we also had the small Testament type.
Mm-hmm. Where'd you keep the large Bible?
The large Bible. I don't remember, really. Don't.
Where did you go to church then on Sunday, or did you just have what?
Went to the Methodist Church in Buxton. Methodist Church was the only church here until about the 1930s, late 30s, I guess. The Assembly of God came in, or Pentecostal, they called it then. But it was Methodist up until then. Used to have a lot of tent meetings in Buxton, Harris, Avon. The old big tent, you know, what they call a revival. I remember one time, about the time that they were putting the addition on, they had a big tent meeting up in Avon. Well, the Lighthouse Working Party built this addition, and they had two fellows in there that were pretty rough. Good people, but just they liked to drink. So they had this big tent meeting up in Avon, and these two fellows decided they'd go to the meeting, and they got a little loud. So my father, he gets them in the car, and he brings them down to what was Big Kankakee Coast Guard Station then. And back then they had the horses to haul the boat cart to launch it. Of course, they had stables for these horses, and they were the big Clydesdale type horse, red and white one. So he takes these two fellows and he puts them in that stable and locks the door and lets them stay there all night. That sobered them up. I mean, they were in a mess when they came out of there. But my dad could handle people pretty well. He knew about what to do. He was a mild-mannered person, but when it came to action, he always knew what to do. So they had no more problem with those people. I remember one of them's name was Gunnarsson, and the other, I forget now, Britt. And Britt was a fellow that never wore a shirt. He was down here one time, put in the breakwater in, the jetty. And his skin was just like an alligator's. Never wore a shirt. The hottest sun. Just thought I'd throw that in there. One of the little stories.
Yeah, we were raised Methodist, so things that you tell me remind me of my grandmother.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Yeah, we had to go to church.
How did you spend Sunday afternoon?
Sunday afternoon, usually right around the Lighthouse, Sunday seemed to be always a visiting day by the people in the village. They'd come out and want to go to the beach, and always had a breeze out there at these hot woods, you know, and this hot sand. So we had an awful lot of company. And one of the things that the lighthouse keeper on duty had to do, it's in his regulations. If someone wanted to go to the top of the lighthouse, he'd have to let them go. But the catch is, he had to go with them. And then he'd have to explain the mechanism to them, how it operated. This was part of their duty, their regulation. I expect my dad went up there at times, maybe 8, 9 times a day. And you always had to have shoes on. Couldn't go barefooted. Bare feet track sand, salt off of your feet on those iron steps. And of course, there's always a danger of stubbing your toe, getting hurt. So you always had to have shoes. If someone went out there barefooted and wanted to go to the lighthouse, and he'd have to wait till somebody came down and loaned him his shoes so he could go up. I've seen that happen. Yeah. That was a must.
I imagine the lighthouse was spotless, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of continuing maintenance. They, if it needed just a touch up on the outside, one keeper would swing out in a boatswain chair with a block and tackle from the rail. The other 2 keepers would man the lead line coming all the way to the bottom to raise him or lower him. And if it needed a complete paint job, my father would usually hire some local teenage boys or early 20s do that. They had what they called a paint box. It's about 20 feet long and about maybe 5, 6 feet wide, and a rail about 4 feet deep would accommodate four men. And the way he would raise and lower that, he'd tie it to the bumper of his car. And if they wanted to go ahead, if they wanted to be raised, he'd go ahead. If they wanted to be lowered, he'd back up. He had a group of local boys in there one time, and he noticed that they were cutting up a little bit. They were having too much fun. So he figured they'd probably got into that alcohol he had up there to clean the lens with somehow or other, or maybe some meal tea. But anyway, they had some black on white and white on black, and they were just making a mess. And so he gets in the car and he starts it up. And he backs it up real fast, about 40 feet. Well, when he did, they dropped like this, about 50 feet. So they start screaming and hollering, wanting to know what's going on. So he kept right on lowering them. Brought them down, they staggered out of the box. And he said, "All right, fellas," he says, "take your clothes off, go over to the beach and take a swim, sober up, and I'll let you go back to work." Which they did. I think it took them a little while to get their hands steady so they could hold that brush, But he had a way of dealing with people and not making them mad or making an enemy, but just, I guess maybe that's the reason he was there 20 years, longer than any other keeper.
Good comments.
Oh, yeah, he did. I think the best piece of advice he ever gave me when I left home, he says, "Well," he says, "you're going to have to bite your tongue many a time." He says, "But it'll be worth it." Yes, that's what he did a lot.
When you think back from your childhood, you left. Well, say 33 when you all moved away. Prior to say 1933, I'm just wondering what is, if you just think a moment about what was your best time, sort of the best thing that ever happened to you that you can remember, or the best time that you remember.
As a child, offhand, I can't remember. I can tell you the worst time. We'll paint the lighthouse again, okay? It was just prior to an inspection. I was about 8 years old, and had this friend that lived in the first assistant's side. His name was Murray Casey. Well, the lighthouse had been painted, and the houses all cleaned, and painted where it was needed. And the inspector was to come down from Washington, D.C. I remember his name. His name was Captain King. Well, my father used to always go to Norfolk to pick Captain King up. He would come down on a steamer from Washington to Norfolk. Well, we had no roads. You had to drive the beach. Had no bridges. You had to cross the ferry. So he would get the last ferry going north, spend the night in Norfolk, and get the first ferry back the next morning, bring the inspector down. Well, just before he left, Murray and I was over in the Lighthouse yard playing, and right beside the granite steps going up to the entrance, they had the vat of tar, pitch. They used this for caulking cracks, and it was summertime, and this stuff was real fluid, you know, running, and so there was a brush there handy and a paddle, and there was a couple older boys in their teens, and they prodded us a little bit about playing with the tar, and so we started messing with it. And pretty soon we were finding ourselves putting it on those granite tiers going around, making one big mess. So my father, he spotted this before he left, and he said, "Did you have anything to do with that?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well," he said, "I'm in a hurry now," and he says, "but when this inspection's over," he said, "we'll talk about it." Well, I knew about what the talk was going to be, and I knew I was also going to have to wait about 3 days to find out what what was going to happen. So the inspector came down, looked the place over, and Dad took him back. And I thought maybe he'd forgotten all about it, you know, but he hadn't. And he started looking for me, and he found me. And when he found me, they used to shave with a straight razor, and they had this leather strap that they sharpened these razors. Well, he had this strap in his hand, and I knew he wasn't going to shave. He said, "Let's take a walk." So that's the longest walk I ever took in my life. We walked right over to the scene of the vandalism, and he said, "You see that?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, young man," he said, "you're going to remember it just as long as you live." Well, I'm 66, and I'm still remembering that thing because he gave me a good one. He never had to do it again, though. Never. Yeah, I went to my mother, and I asked her, I said, "You think he'll forget that?" She says, "No, he never forgot anything in his life." She says, he'll not forget it." I said, "Can you talk him out of it?" "No, I don't interfere with your daddy's business." But the weight was the hardest part. Oh, he didn't half kill me or anything like that, but he stung me up good. I think some of it's still there.
I'm sure the weight was the worst part.
Oh, that weight was terrible. Boy.
What happened to Murray? Did he...
Well, I asked him, I said, "Well, what about Murray?" He said, "I'll let Jim handle Murray. I'll handle you." Well, Jim was Murray's daddy, see. And I don't know where Murray ever got anything out of it or not. Don't believe he ever did.
You never touched the tar again?
No, I didn't mess with that.
Did you all always get along with the other keepers' families?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. We were real close. We still are. Those are, yeah, we're still very close. Especially the one family that I'm talking about, the Casey family. I remember them more than any of the others. I mean, except one couple that had no children. That we called him Uncle Bill and Miss Lenora. They were mother and father to all of us. Miss Lenora just died last year, 94, I think she was.
Do you remember going up to any of the Coast Guard stations and looking in those?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Lots of times. In fact, when we were, we'd chase horses along the beach and say down towards Hatteras. if we were down that way about noontime, we'd stop in and they'd give us lunch. And yeah, we'd chase horses all the way to Hatter's Summit sometimes.
Did you ever ride any of them?
Oh yeah, yeah. I used to ride mostly when I was a little fella with my dad, especially at dipping time when they'd have to round up their cattle and horses and dip them for ticks. They had a dipping vat over here, and they had a pen. They'd pin them in, and they'd have to run day and night sometimes to locate through these woods and up and down the beach. And I'd ride behind the saddle. I have a scar on my leg, right leg now, where it chafed up on the side of a horse and what they call a gall, and it's just like a vaccination scar about the size of a quarter. It was a main sore for a long time, and that came from chafing on the side of the horse.
I was curious about what kind of. Did you have any store-bought toys?
Oh, I remember I had a train set one time, and 10 soldiers, the whole army. And,
Now those 10 soldiers. Can you describe them a little bit? Those.
they were World War I soldiers, and I guess they were more lead, and they call them 10 soldiers, but I guess it was lead 10. 10 soldiers, yeah. They had the cannons, and of course the men.
Were they flat, or were they three-dimensional?
They were three-dimensional.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was your train like? Do you remember that at all?
It wasn't electric. You had to wind it up. Then I remember I had a horse race outfit. It had the steel pellets behind the horses. You remember anything like that?
They ran like on a downward track, and you could flip it this way and they'd run. Was that the?
No, this was level, but it was somewhere or another those steel pellets behind each horse would hit the back of the horse and just push him along like that. I don't know exactly how it operated, but it was a horse race set.
Your wind-up train. What did it run on? Like a circle track or a figure eight, or?
No, just plain oval track is all. No fancy stuff to it. It just moved.
Did you set it up at Christmas?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What, around the tree?
No, in front of the tree. I remember I set it one time on the hearth of the fireplace in there.
At Christmas, how did you set your tree up? Was it on a platform, or how did you all do that?
Usually put it in a bucket of some kind. They're always live trees. I mean, we didn't buy them. We went out and cut them, either a cedar or a pine or what have you. I think we even had a holly one time.
Who played the piano?
My mother played some, and my older sister Vivian played, and I think my other sister Myrtle, I think she played. That was about it. Well, the others were so small.
Could you talk a little bit about your mother? Did she, what you remember about her doing during the day? Did she help your father?
As far as the Lighthouse was concerned, no, she didn't help him with that. She did all the cooking, of course, taking care of the babies. She was not a strong woman. She had quite a bit of sickness when she was out there. I remember she used to have what they call a nervous spell sometimes. She had a lot of problem with her feet, burning sensation. No one ever determined what that was. I remember when babies would be born. I think this was common around the whole village. A young girl would come in and stay until the mother got better. So we had doctors. The babies were delivered by midwives. And, but I can remember they'd get the young people to come and stay and take care of some of the work in the house until the mother got so she could. But she was a frail woman, not very strong.
Do you remember how she did laundry?
Well, she was fortunate. She had a washing machine, and I remember the machine had three. I call them dashers, like the headlamps of a car, and it was operated by gasoline. Had a little motor down there. But these three dashers looked like the inverted headlamps of a car. If you know what I'm talking about, going up and down and turning. But that was a washing machine.
Where did you keep that? The kitchen?
In the storehouse. That was behind the.
So then she'd bring that out when you went to do laundry.
Oh, it stayed in the storehouse
she did
all
it
the
in
time.
the storehouse.
Yeah, right.
I see.
Mm-hmm. Then she did an awful lot by the wash tub too, and the scrub board.
Did she use the wash tub in the storehouse?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think maybe she did. Maybe she pre-soaked them in the tub and before she put them in the wash. They used to use a lot of things. They used the soap. They used the bluing. They used the. Not as convenient as it is now when you push a button. And
Did you all help with dishes?
the girls did. I didn't. When you have 4 or 5 girls around, you know, I stay out of the kitchen except to eat.
Do you remember your mother sewing?
Yes, did a lot of sewing, darning socks, and then the embroidery work. She used to do a lot of that.
Did she make any clothes?
Made clothes, sure. Yeah, she had a sewing machine, a Singer sewing machine.
Where did she keep that?
I believe that was in the dining room too. I don't know exactly where, but she always had a sewing machine.
You didn't have electricity out there,
No electricity, no.
so it had to be treadle.
Treadle.
I'm wondering about the piano. Do you remember the family getting around and singing around the piano?
Oh yes, yes, we did that. Sure, did a lot of that.
All kinds of music, or
Used to sing a lot of church music.
This is tape 3, Rany Jennette, June 23rd, 1987, oral history recording.
okay, whenever you're ready. Yeah, just if you would talk a little bit about making those hoops and things like that, and the business you mentioned to me about your sisters with the catalogs. That'd be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Start off with, I don't believe kids today have as much fun as the kids did in my generation. The very fact that we had to use our imagination and manufacture things to play with, like the old netters here used to use to sink the net. They used hoops. These hoops were probably 8 inches in diameter. We'd get heavy wire and we'd bend it, make a little handle, and then we'd have the open face, and we'd roll these hoops in the sand. Seems like every boy that went to school at that time would have a hook he rolled. I guess just to be having something to do, you know, and the hook would make a track, and another boy would come behind him and try to follow that track. I remember the girls, when when the Sears Roebuck catalog or the Spiegel catalog was outdated. They couldn't wait to get the scissors and cut out their paper dolls. They'd cut out whole families. They'd cut out the furniture and set up their doll houses. Another thing, we have lots of pines here. We have pine straw. And the girls would make houses just a little distance from the schoolhouse. They'd pile up the pine straw and make separate rooms. And they'd get logs and make chairs to sit in. And some way they'd make tables. They just set up housekeeping with a pine straw house. Not a covered house, but just the rooms divided up. Just seems like we had more fun then. Right beside the school, we had this big hill covered with pine straw. The boys would get barrel staves, and they'd get the bottom just as slick as they could, and we'd slide down the hill on these barrel staves. And even try to make skis, dodging the big pines as you went down the hill. Very slick, just like glass. Lots of fun.
Everybody probably have a stroke if you did that now.
Oh, sure, yeah, no doubt. They'd think you'd gone bananas. But
Did your family order a lot of things out of catalogs?
most everything was ordered out of the catalog. We did have general stores here that stocked some items, but at Christmas time, Sears Roebuck catalog was Santa Claus. Cowboy suits and guns and things of that kind.
Do you remember was there any cinema or any films around?
I think there was one theater down in Hatteras when we lived at Lighthouse, called the Austin Theater. No, there was a Burris, Corlett Burris, and his father had a theater down there. I think the first movie I ever saw was 42nd Street. How long ago that was? I remember Wings, 42nd Street, and Over the Hill to the Poorhouse. These were all in the 20s, sure.
You think of anything else?
Not at the moment. If you could begin to read, I think that would be great, and maybe some other things would occur to us.
My name is Rany Jennette, and I am a park ranger for National Park Service. I am the son of Rany Jennette, the last principal keeper of this lighthouse under the Lighthouse Authority. This is prior to Coast Guard takeover. He served this station from 1919 to 1939, including the Skeleton Tower in Buxton. I was born in 1921 in the principal keeper's quarters. One of 7 children, 5 were born in that house. We lived in this house until September 1933, at which time we moved to our grandfather's house in Buxton. We thought our stay would be temporary, but Mother Nature proved us wrong. The area that you view today is somewhat different than that which I can see in my memories. There were no dunes. These are basically man-made, started by the Civilian Conservation Corps and WPA in the early 30s, and expanded by the National Park Service in the late 50s. The beach was mostly flat and seldom disturbed. An occasional car track or hoof print of livestock was soon covered by blowing sand caused by an ever-present wind. Shells were in abundance most everywhere. Where you see asphalt now, close-cropped grass was the scene. Cattle and horses kept it down. North and west of the dwellings was a large deep pond and sedge. The extreme eastern edge of the pond was shallow and sandy bottom, free of growth because overwash was common in those days. As you moved west about midway, there were flags, cattails, and lily pads. There was plenty of life in these ponds also, ducks, turtles, and fish. Cottonmouth moccasins were also around. Looking south, you first see the old Tower Hill, the site of the first lighthouse, with the remains of the structure almost covering the mound, rock, slate, and stone. This has been claimed by the sea now. Beyond that was the old Coast Guard station and its dwellings, about where the Loran station is located. In the area of the Park Service maintenance and housing, there was no forest as you see it now. The pines were planted by the CCC. West, the lighthouse road was not there. This was mostly sedge. This road was constructed by the Seabees in the 50s. Just beyond the pond on the north edge, there were garages, pens for hogs and chickens, and vegetable gardens. A car track led to Buxton Village and beyond. Small hills, Yopon, and scrub oak along the way. The Red Drum is on a site that used to be called the Head of the Sedge. Around the dwellings was a wire fence supported by reinforced concrete posts, about 6-inch marsh. A fence divided the principal keeper's quarters from the double keeper's quarters. Single and double metal gates were placed in convenient locations. A broad concrete walk ran from the lighthouse to more narrow concrete walks surrounding the dwellings. These were originally brick. The lawns were grass and clover, kept neatly trimmed at all times by using a reel-type push mower and livestock. The posts were kept white with whitewash. Each keeper had a storehouse for feed, paint, and other supplies. Also outdoor privies, 3-holers, large, medium, and small. A coal bin divided into 3 compartments was located behind the double keeper's quarters. Wood piles were also a fixture. Rainwater was stored in cisterns. Each dwelling had a summer kitchen, but eventually oil cook stoves were placed in the main kitchen along with the iron cook stove. Heating was achieved by a coal-burning heat roller and fireplaces. For lighting, we had kerosene burning lamps. The area between the dwellings and the lighthouse is not now as it used to be. Over the years, fill has been placed and the area raised considerably. I can remember when there were 2 to 3 steps up to the porch of the double keeper's quarters, and it would be a struggle for a small child to climb atop the cistern. Life here was very good as I remember. Lighthouse and Coast Guard families were quite large in most cases, and visits were frequent between neighbors. All the families had very close ties. You have probably heard or read that the life of a lighthouse keeper was very lonely, and I am sure that in most cases this was true. But we did not have this experience. In fact, it was just the opposite. The lighthouse has always been a favorite place to visit by the village folks, so we had plenty of company, especially on Sunday. The principal keeper and his assistants had the same duties in the operation of the lighthouse. The light was lit at sunset and extinguished at sunrise. A kerosene burning mantle lamp was the prime source of light. This was located in the center of the first order Fresnel lens, which concentrated all available light, 80%, into a single focus called bullseyes. There were 24 of these bullseyes shooting out 24 rays of light, revolving slowly like a giant fan. Very beautiful. The weights for the clock mechanism to revolve the lens had to be wound up each day for each night's operation. A governor controlled the speed of rotation, which had to be very accurate in order to not change the character of the light and mislead ships at sea. The keeper timed this rotation with a stopwatch each night of operation. At a distance, the light had a flashing effect. 1.4 seconds flash, 6 seconds eclipse. Close up, it displayed constant revolving rays of light, Kerosene for the light had to be carried to the top by hand. Clockwork had to be oiled, lens cleaned, and other routine maintenance and cleaning. Lens were cleaned with powdered rouge and alcohol. Many times I accompanied my father up to Lighthouse and helped with some of the chores, especially cleaning the brass. He would let me look through the spy glasses or binoculars and watch ships passing along the coast. Shipping lanes were much closer then. We moved from place to place by automobile, mostly Model T, Chevrolet, Buick, Chrysler. Sometimes, however, horseback and horse and cart seemed to be more practical, and it was more fun. There was not much need for a car, usually church, occasional visits to Buxton for stores, post office. A trip to the mainland was a rare occasion and a big event in our lives. Grubbing up once a month at one of the general stores in the village was also a big event for the young folks. At that time, a few extras could be purchased. There was no running to the supermarket 3 or 4 times a day as now. Fresh milk was always on hand from our cow, fresh pork at hog killing time, and fresh vegetables from gardens. However, a fresh beef roast was somewhat short in supply. A local person would sometimes slaughter a steer, most likely on the beach, skin it, cut it up, and then peddle the beef by horse and cart through the village. Most everyone knew when this was about to occur, and it was no problem getting rid of it. The good times and further memories of life at the Lighthouse was brought to a close in September 1933. In late August 1933, a severe storm hit the Outer Banks with not too much damage, and as we had experienced storms before, not too much concern was expressed. We had a very dry summer that year, and the ponds surrounding the area were bone dry and even cracked like a desert. As the surging seas came across the beach, the ponds were filled and water surrounded the dwellings. In a little while, things were beginning to look normal again. However, the worst was yet to come. My father received word by way of telephone from down south that a real severe storm was moving up the coast and would hit our area. He knew this one was going to be real bad, and more especially since we had not recovered from the last one. Water everywhere. He instructed the other keepers to move their families to safer grounds. So we all moved to the village of Buxton. This storm proved to be as expected, and damage was severe, especially to the lower floors and furnishings. 125-mile-an-hour winds. The seas busted down the door in our house and even upended a large round oak dining room table, which my father had placed against the door after securing it with large nails. He and the assistant keepers weathered out the storm. We never returned to live at the Lighthouse again, but to each of us it was always home, even to this day. We had a croquet set in our yard, and this game was a favorite with young and old alike. Competition was very keen, often resulting in arguments and temporary disputes. Other games played were bull in the pen, baseball, and pitching quoits. These were half bricks we used. Another thing I remember is how anxious we kids were to shed our shoes to go barefooted. Under no circumstance were we allowed to do this until May 1st. In no way could we go to the beach for a swim after eating a meal or on a full stomach. Dr. Fobb, a young pharmacist at the Naval Radio Station, along with Miss Rovina, a midwife, took care of most of our severe illnesses and performed many miraculous wonders with our limited skills and the modern medicine of that day. Doc Fobb will always be remembered by folks along the Outer Banks. We never considered him anything other than one of us as long as he lived. He died in 1985 at the age of 94. Lighthouse supplies were delivered by buoy tenders. Some of the names of these tenders I remember. There's the Holly, the Tulip, the Violet, the Maple, and Speedwell. The Speedwell, I believe, was a side wheeler. My father would hire a local gas boat owner to take him out to the tender, and sometimes he would let me go with him. We would have dinner with the crew, and I enjoyed a tour of the ship. I was especially interested in the engine room. My father was always happy to see old shipmates. He spent many years on tenders and light ships before coming home to Cape Hatteras. The tender would anchor in Cape Channel. Supplies would be loaded to the gunnels in the ship's small boats and head for shore. The crew would run the boat until she ran aground at the old mail landing, just west of where the pilot house restaurant is located. Then it was overboard, and supplies, coal, paint, rope, and so forth were carried on back through sometimes waist-deep water to shore, reloaded in horse and cart for a trip to the lighthouse. In the mid and late 30s, Model A Ford trucks were used to haul these supplies. Lighthouse working parties were sent down from Portsmouth and Baltimore Lazarette Depot to perform major work at the lighthouse. I remember when the addition was built on the principal keeper's quarters about 1927. The buoy tender towed a barge, house barge, and anchored in Cape Channel. This was the working party's living quarters for a while. Later they were moved in the first assistant's quarters. W.F. Lynch, the foreman, lived with us. He and my father had been friends for a long time. I'll always remember Mr. Lynch, especially because of the time he took me and a friend on a snipe hunting trip. We were about 10 years old then. He would tell us all about snipe hunting at night, and we just had to go. So one night we took a tow bag, flashlight to the beach, walked the surf to the old Tower Hill. He said, "Boys, you lie down one on each side of the bag and just hold it open. Place the light beside the bag and let it shine down the beach. I'll walk down the beach and scare up some snipe. They'll see the light and they'll run toward it, and some will go in the bag, close it real fast." We waited for a long time and got very tired. In disgust, we walked back home. The old folks got a big kick out of the joke, but we were too wise for another try. Lighthouses, dwellings, and keepers were subject to inspection by the lighthouse superintendent from Washington, D.C. Prior to his inspection, there was a beehive of activity around the premises. I remember one such inspection very clearly. Everything was ship-shape, lighthouse touched up where needed, yards and houses cleaned. Even furniture had been put in the yard and aired. Christmas at the lighthouse was a happy time and was celebrated the same as most other places. Tree, fireplace, presents, and a big dinner. However, we had two Christmases. We had the old Christmas, January the 5th. Stockings were hung from the mantel over the fireplace and filled with nuts, fruit, and candy, and one small gift. Christmas Eve was a joyous time for all the people, both young and old, at the Methodist Church, the only church we had then. A huge tree was placed in the church, and every parent would place a present on the tree for each of their children, name tag attached. Sometimes the tree would be so loaded that presents would have to be placed on the floor underneath the tree. The church Sunday school provided a Christmas bag of candy, apple and orange, for each person in the village. Packing these bags was a happy time, usually at one of the general stores, usually by the young people of the church. After the Christmas program, which consisted of choir and congregation singing and children's speeches, the superintendent of Sunday schools would start calling out names. A chuckle would run through the crowd when he started calling the names of a family of 14 or 15 persons. No one was ever missed, and if unable to attend, their church gift was delivered. Roundup time of horses and cattle. This was for dipping purposes. This was a big event. Each owner was responsible for gathering his own livestock, but usually it was a combined operation of helping each other. This was a lot of work. Stock would range up and down the beach and in the wooded areas. Sometimes it would involve riding day and night in order to find all the animals. A large pen or corral would be built at the dipping vat location, and all the stock would be penned up. They would then be herded to the vat and run through a creosote solution. As they came up the other end, a person with green paint would slap them on the rump with a paintbrush, indicating they had been given the treatment. Of course, this was a great curiosity to the young folks. Even though I was quite young, my father would let me ride behind the saddle while looking for a steer, a cow, and calf. I still have a scar on my right leg caused from chafing on the side of the horse, old Jim. Horses were branded and cattle had their ears cropped to indicate ownership. My father owned 17 horses. He had 40 head of cattle. The state passed the law that no animals running loose. Most animals were sold to farmers. These farmers were across the Sound on the mainland. All stock that hadn't been rounded up by a certain date were found by state riders and became the property of the state. I never knew my father had the ability to lose control or even show a sign of temper until they took the cow and calves that belonged to him. He had searched the beach and woods day and night for this cow and calf. He couldn't find them. He rode to the pen and spotted the animals already there, and the state rider had a rope on them. He said, "That's my cow and calf." The rider, in an unfriendly tone, said, "Not anymore, Captain. They belong to the state." My father didn't say a word, but got on old Jim and rode back home. He walked into the house, picked up his 5-shot automatic, rode back to the penning area. Got off horseback, took aim, and fired 2 shots, one for the cow and one for the calf. Got on his horse and said, "All right, mister, you take care of him." Turned and rode away. I have heard him say, "I'm just glad they didn't try to stop me." A trip off the island was the most uncertain of events in our times. There were 3 routes that could be taken up the beach. Dead low water, we took the surf and could make it quickly as now. High water, we took the inside road. Car track winding east and west most of the time, and full of ruts, sometimes full of water. Very slow, maybe 3 or 4 hours. The other alternative was the bank of the beach, making our own track. Tires were dropped about 12 to 15 pounds of pressure for flotation and better traction. Get a head start and keep going was the key. Getting stuck was a regular occasion and usually a rough trip. Leave home dressed with your Sunday best on, and by the time you reached Oregon Inlet, you were most likely to be full of sand and barefooted. Radiator boiling over, both you and the car. Mail time each day was looked forward to, as is the case today, only it was much different then. People didn't wait for the mail to arrive at the post office, but went to the mail landing to wait for the appearance of the mail boat. Navy boys from the radio compass station, Coast Guard, Lighthouse, local villagers, boys, girls, men, and women. The boat usually came into sight about 4 o'clock. Why this gathering, I don't know. It just seemed to be the thing to do. A local man had the responsibility of getting the mail to the post office. When the boat anchored, he would pull a small skiff in the anchorage and offload the sacks of mail. When Sears Roebuck mailed out their catalogs, this could be a real large load. He would then pull back to shore, offload the skiff. Now came the big job, the haul to the post office. He would manage to get the bags on his back and start walking up the sandy road. Sometimes all you could see was sacks of mail piled on 2 legs. The post office then was located across the road where the moonshine florist is now. Sometimes a passenger would arrive on the mail boat. Could be someone local returning from a trip to the city, or a stranger just for a visit, most likely a drummer or salesman calling on local stores. Anyway, a stranger could be identified right away as soon as he said the first word. Speech was different, and the common expression was, "That man talks proud." They walked proud, too, very careful not to get sand in their shoes. A native would most likely pull his shoes off in the boat, roll his pants up, wade ashore before the skiff landed, then trudge on up the road with shoes in his hand going home. A favorite tale told over and over about the old man carrying the sacks of mail to the post office. I didn't witness it, but I've heard the story many times. He was loaded down with all he could carry, and one of the bags fell to the ground. He was about halfway to the post office. When it hit the ground, a tiny voice said, "Mama." It scared the old man. He picked the bag up and ran to the post office. When he arrived, the postmaster wanted to know what the hurry was. He said, "Unlock this bag quick. There's a baby inside." The time was just prior to Christmas, and someone had ordered one of those new talking doll babies from Sears Roebuck. Sears catalogs were very important items in our lives. Not only did they provide hours of entertainment and wishing, but ordering all of our needs. They were also used in the old privates. We went to school in Buxton, grades 1 through 11. The schoolhouse was located where the state yard is now, just west of the Cape Hatteras Anglers Club. The first schoolhouse burned down about 1928. No fire department then, only a bucket brigade from an old hand pump. Sometimes we would walk to school, but usually someone would pick us up and take us there, either from the Lighthouse or from the Coast Guard station. However, after school, we could usually count on walking home. We had no lunchroom, of course, and lunches were carried in a paper bag. Sometimes we'd go across the causeway and get a can of potted meat pickle and crackers at the general store. At recess, morning and afternoon, we played ball, marbles, and what we thought was basketball, just an old hoop nailed to a pine tree. We also had skis made from barrel staves, which we used to slide down a steep pine straw covered hill. The girls skipped rope a lot, made pine straw houses. A portable library was at the principal keeper's dwelling for use by Lighthouse families. This contained books of all fiction, medical books, so forth. This library was in use for 6 months and sent to another establishment, but replaced by another. The principal keeper also had a medicine chest. This chest contained a variety of medicines: sweet spirits of niter, cough mixture, castor oil, spirits of camphor, chloroform, quinine pills, cathartic pills, laudanum, carbolic acid, bandages, iodine, glycerin, lactopepsin, Rochelle salts, and a medical dictionary. For nails stuck in feet, my mother would always use fatback and turpentine. For cuts, kerosene worked very well. Rany Jennette, my father, was principal keeper of Cape Hatteras Lighthouse for 20 years. When the Coast Guard took over, Old keepers were given a choice of joining the Coast Guard or remaining as they were to retirement, but subject to transfer to lesser lights, more remote and less important to their needs. My father was transferred to Roanoke Marshes, off Wanchese, North Carolina, screw pile light. He remained there until he retired in 1943, still faithful to the old Lighthouse service. He was born in the village of Buxton, November the 30th, 1882, son of Benjamin and Dorcas Rany Jennette. He joined the Lighthouse service in 1904 as a deckhand. He was transferred to the Diamond Shoals Lightship in 1909 as a quartermaster. In 1911, served as captain of the 35-foot channel lightship, and sometimes later on the lighthouse tender Maple. In 1913, he was transferred to the Diamond Shoals Relief Lightship. 1919, was transferred to Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, where he stayed until 1939. He was then transferred to the Roanoke Marshes Lighthouse, where he retired in 43. He enjoyed 22 years of retirement and passed away in 1965 at the age of 83. Never in ill health all his living days. He was highly respected by everyone on Hatteras Island, a kind-hearted and mild manner, always giving a hand whenever needed. Being one of the few people owning an automobile, he ran an ambulance service on occasion to Elizabeth City whenever anyone needed hospitalization. That's about it.
Can I ask you two things that you mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
The library.
Yeah.
That was rotating. In other words, it
The Lighthouse Department had something like 300 different libraries that they transferred all over the Great Lakes, the all coast, Gulf Coast, and we had one continuously.
was it? Did it come in a large box or something?
It was about the size of that stand behind you there.
Wait, do you remember where your parents kept it?
I think we'll have to check with Vivian on that. I don't remember exactly where it was. It was available to all the keepers.
One that I've seen is a very nice cave, mahogany cave. It's smart.
Oh, you've seen one of them? Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about the medicine chest? Do you remember where that was?
Medicine chest, I believe, was upstairs.
Probably keep that away.
Yeah. But it was loaded.
Probably kept it in your bedroom.
I think that's where it was.
Did your father have any sort of an office? Or just...
Only the corner where his desk was. That was the.
Did he keep that locked most of the time? Or
No.
kept the top
Right.
open?
Yeah.
Well, he probably did. He keep the log books
Well, that's
on
right.
the desk, so he probably used it a lot.
I don't know whatever happened to the logbook.
I believe there's a Library of Congress.
Oh, they are? That'd be interesting to see those.
Yeah, you can go and see them.
Now, the keeper's manual I had, and that was removed when the storm hit, I think, because it showed signs of being wet. And so I kept a hold of that, and also the old key.
Do you still have them?
Well, they're in the museum.
Do you have anything else that was in the house, or let's put it this way: do you know of anything that was in the house that still survives in your family?
No. You talking about furnishings or
even pictures, or even your father's uniforms, or anything like
no
that?
uniforms? No, I don't know what happened to those. No, and as Connie mentioned, I have that old grindstone. That's I tracked that down. I know it's stayed in our yard for a long time.
Do you remember where it was originally located?
Yes. In fact, there's a picture taken back in the 1800s that shows the grindstone, and it stayed just about that location the whole time we were there.
How was it used?
How was it used? For sharpening axes and hoes or any knives. Had the treadle on it. Of course, all I had was stone. It had the treadle and the water trough underneath of it where it picked up water every time it went around. Yeah, I played with that a lot.
Did your father do the sharpening?
Oh, yeah. All keepers had access to it. Stayed in our yard. So it's an oldie. I'd like for you people to do something with it.
Yeah,
It'd be wonderful to have it back.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'd be a problem to have a
Maybe we could do
stand and treadle
Yeah.
made for it.
I'm sure we could make that. And then set it up on the porch so it wouldn't have to.
Wouldn't get so weathered.
Yeah, that would be nice to have.
So other than that, I don't know of anything.
Well, you've certainly been helpful.
We don't even have part of the old lands, but I'm sure a lot of people do. When it was left, when it was abandoned, you know, it was just.
One up and took souvenirs.
Yes, I have an idea that a lot of the CCC had took some of that. So.
Could you describe for us what it was like right before one of the inspectors came? You touched upon it a little bit, but do you remember all the cleaning, etc., that went on?
Well, yes, the fences, of course. Prior to the wire mesh fence, they had the boarded fence. I can barely remember that. But then the posts had to be all whitewashed, and the lighthouse had to be touched up if it in spots. If it just needed to touch up, they did that with the bosun chair. I think I mentioned that. And then for a complete paint job was the paint box. Houses, same thing. All the premises, storehouses, privies, anything that they just had to be as near spotless as they could be. These inspectors were, I think, usually retired Navy officers, and they didn't come down trying to hang anybody. It was just a routine. You see, the lighthouse service had been such a haphazard operation in the beginning that by the time they got around to the real professional way of doing things, going into civil service, a lot of years had passed. And then they had also the inspectors who were, the lighthouse board was comprised of high-ranking Army and Navy people. This is what history says. That came about 1890, I think. At the same time, they went into a uniform service. Their buoy tender captains were uniformed. The light ship captains were uniformed. So they felt like that people would do a better and more professional job if they did put them, which they did. It was a symbol for them. And I don't know whether you've read the history of. Have you ever read Holland's book? Okay, well, you know what I'm talking about then. The non-professional way of running things.
Yeah, it was casual.
Pharaoh Farah, and I use this in my campfire talk.
Did they do a lot of cleaning inside as well?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Right.
So your house would have to have been.
They inspected the houses also.
How did your mother feel about that? Did she ever comment on that?
Oh, I think that all of them probably dreaded it. But I think that's a natural thing. But I never heard her complain about it.
I'm sure that guy coming out of Washington, I can imagine inspection when I was in the service. So.
Yeah.
Did he stay with you?
Sometimes I think they did. Yeah. There was no place else to stay. You had no motels. We had lots of company out there.
Do you remember any in particular?
I remember some of the friends of my father. See, he spent a lot of time on buoy tenders and light ships. And when he was on Diamond Shoals light ship, sometimes he'd put a small boat over, come ashore, land the boat on the beach, walk home, spend the night, next morning go back.
How far was that ship off?
About 12 miles.
And what kind of, he was on what, little?
Small launch, yeah. He was a man that didn't have much fear.
Sounds like
Even when he was 80 years old. When I had this a red drum over here, he was always out there 6 o'clock in the morning, 11:30 at night, till I closed, pumping gas at 80. And I missed him one day. So I thought maybe he was sick. I went home. I asked my mother, I said, where's Dad? She said, he's outside. So I went back out in the yard, and I looked up, and he was on the roof. He was fixing his television antenna. I said, man, I said, you better get down from there. He said, why? I said, you fall off there and break your neck. He said, I'm in better shape than you are. So I left him alone. I let him stay up there. He was 80 then. Yeah, he was quite a person. Throw a rope around that lightning rod on top of the stack on the lighthouse, pull himself up there and paint it.
pull himself?
Yeah, pull himself up there and paint it.
Did your mother ever help him with any of his lighthouse duties?
No. Mm-mm.
This concludes the end of taping of Rany Jennette on June 23rd, 1987 in Buxton, North Carolina, near Cape Hatteras.
Thank you again for joining us to The Landing. This podcast is brought to you by the Core Sound Waterfowl Museum and Heritage Center. Tune in next week as we continue learning, sharing, and remembering together. If you'd like to hear more, check out our previous episodes where you get your podcasts. If you or someone you know is interested in being on The Landing, please reach out through the link in the description. Until then, stay safe and be kind.